the 7D Bible. Close your eyes just for a moment. Close your eyes. Take a breath in, a real one, not the shallow breath you have been taking all day, the kind that barely fills the top of your chest. A real breath all the way down into your belly, into the very base of your lungs, and let it go. Again, in and out. One more time. Good. I want you to notice something. In the 3 breaths you just took, something shifted, even slightly, even imperceptibly. Something in your body remembered that it is allowed to slow down, that the urgency, the endless, exhausting urgency of modern life does not have to live inside you every single moment of every single day. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to be here, fully here, not half here while your mind is somewhere else, solving the next problem or rehearsing the next difficult conversation or scrolling through the next feed of other people's carefully curated lives. Here, in this moment, in this breath, in this conversation. That is where we begin. My name is Smarty, and I want to start by telling you something that I wish someone had told me many years before I was ready to hear it. You are not a human doing. You are a human being. And there is a world of difference between the two. A human doing is always in motion, always producing, always performing, always measuring their worth by what they accomplished today, this week, this year, always haunted by the gap between where they are and where they think they should be. Always tired, always slightly behind, always carrying the weight of everything unfinished. A human being knows something different. A human being understands in their bones, not just in their head, that who they are matters more than what they do, that the quality of their presence matters more than the quantity of their output, that a life well lived is not measured in achievements, but in depth, in love, in growth, in the richness of the inner world that nobody else can see, but everybody around you can feel. I have been on this journey since 2012, and I will tell you honestly, I spent the first several years of it being a human doing, working hard, building, producing, creating, striving, and achieving some things. Yes, real things, things I am proud of. But underneath all of it, underneath the busyness and the building, there was a question I kept pushing aside because I was too afraid to sit with it long enough to hear the answer. Is this it? Is this what a fulfilled life feels like? And the honest answer, for too long, was no. Not because I was failing, but because I was only living in 1 or 2 dimensions of my life while the others were starving. I was working hard, occupationally strong, but spiritually disconnected, emotionally exhausted, physically running on empty, socially isolated in the way that only entrepreneurs who are building alone can be isolated. Surrounded by people but deeply unseen. And it took a series of things, some beautiful, some painful, all necessary, to wake me up to the truth that has become the foundation of everything I now do and teach. We are not one-dimensional beings. We are not even 7-dimensional, strictly speaking. The truth is, and quantum physics and ancient wisdom traditions agree on this, we are infinite dimensional beings. We contain multitudes. We are capable of depths of experience and heights of consciousness that most of us never even approach in an entire lifetime. But we have to start somewhere. And the 7 dimensions, spiritual, occupational, physical, intellectual, social, environmental, and emotional, these 7 are the map. The practical, livable, daily map of what it means to be a whole human being. Not perfect, whole. There is a difference. Perfect is a performance. Whole is a homecoming. And today, for the next 2 hours, we are coming home. Together. all 7 dimensions, not as separate subjects, not as a checklist, but as one living, breathing, interconnected story. Your story, the story of a life being fully lived. I want you to imagine something before we begin. Imagine a river, a wide, deep, powerful river. It does not flow in a straight line. It curves and bends. It has deep pools and shallow rapids. It narrows through gorges and spreads wide across plains. Sometimes it runs clear and still, and you can see straight to the bottom. Sometimes it runs fast and turbulent, and the surface is opaque. But it is always moving, always heading somewhere, always carrying everything that has fallen into it, the leaves, the light, the mud, the stones, carrying it all forward, downstream, toward the sea. Your life is that river. And the 7 dimensions are not 7 different rivers. They are 7 currents within the same river, all flowing together, all shaping each other, all part of the same magnificent movement toward the ocean of a life fully lived. When one current is blocked, when one dimension is neglected or wounded or shut down, the whole river feels it. The flow changes. Things back up. Other currents are forced to compensate. But when all 7 are open, when all 7 are flowing, even imperfectly, even with turbulence, the river becomes something extraordinary. Alive, powerful, unstoppable, beautiful. That is what we are building today. So settle in, get comfortable. This conversation is going to go deep. It is going to go wide. It is going to touch things in you that maybe have not been touched in a while. Let it. This is your 7D Bible, and it begins right now. Chapter 1, the ground beneath your feet, the spiritual dimension. Before anything else, before work and money and health and relationships and all the beautiful, complicated machinery of a human life, before any of that, we start here at the ground. Because I have learned something fundamental in all the years of building and living and falling and rising again. Everything else in your life will only grow as tall as your spiritual foundation is deep. The tallest trees in the world, the ancient ones, the ones that have survived centuries of storms and droughts and fires, they do not have the widest canopies. They have the deepest roots, and the spiritual dimension is your root system. Now, I want to be clear about something at the very beginning of this chapter, because I know that the word spiritual can carry a lot of weight, a lot of associations, a lot of history, personal history, religious history, painful history for some of us. The spiritual dimension is not about religion. It is not about which church or mosque or temple you attend. It is not about which holy book you follow, or which prayers you say, or which rituals you perform. Religion can be a beautiful expression of the spiritual life. For many people, it is the primary doorway into it, and I honor that completely. But the spiritual dimension is bigger than any single tradition. It is available to every human being on earth, regardless of what they believe or do not believe about God or the afterlife or the nature of the universe. Because the spiritual dimension is, at its most essential, about one thing: your relationship with yourself. And the question that lives at the very heart of that relationship: who am I? Not who do people think I am, not who was I raised to be, not who does my job title or my family role or my social media profile say I am. Who am I really? At the deepest level, underneath all the roles and the masks and the performances. What do I value? What do I believe? What do I love? What breaks my heart? What fills me with wonder? What makes me feel most alive? These are spiritual questions. And most people spend their entire lives never sitting with them long enough to hear the answers. because sitting with them requires something that modern life is specifically designed to prevent: stillness. We are afraid of stillness. Most of us, not consciously, not deliberately, but functionally, practically afraid. Because in the stillness, things come up. Grief we have been running from, regrets we have been outrunning, questions we are terrified to ask because we are terrified of the answers. The gap, that sometimes aching, sometimes electrifying gap, between who we currently are and who we know, deep in our bones, we are meant to become. The noise keeps all of that at bay. The busyness keeps it at arm's length. The constant stimulation, the phones, the feeds, the podcasts, the music, the meetings, it all serves, in part, as a very effective system for not having to be alone with ourselves. But here is what I have discovered. The silence is not the enemy. The silence is the teacher. And everything you have been running from, if you will just slow down enough to face it, is not the monster you feared. It is an invitation to know yourself more deeply, to heal what has been wounded, to grow into the person you have been capable of being all along. The spiritual practice, whatever form it takes for you, is the practice of turning toward yourself instead of away. Let me tell you about mine. Every morning, before the children wake, before the phone rings, before the day makes its demands, I have a practice of stillness. It does not take long. Some mornings it is 20 minutes. Some mornings it is 5. But it is consistent. It is mine. And it has become the foundation on which everything else in my day is built. In that stillness, I pray, I sit, I breathe, I listen, not to anything outside myself, but to that quiet, deeper voice that only becomes audible when the louder voices stop. And that voice, the one that speaks not in words, but in knowing, in feeling, in that unmistakable sensation of recognition when something is true. That voice has never once led me wrong. It has challenged me. It has pushed me toward things I was afraid of. It has asked me to let go of things I was holding on to too tightly. It has called me to standards of love and integrity that were sometimes uncomfortable to meet. But it has never led me wrong. This is what a strong spiritual life gives you: an inner compass, a source of guidance that does not come from outside, not from other people's opinions or social media trends or the constantly shifting definitions of success that the culture offers up, but from within, from the deepest, truest, most reliable part of you. And when you have that compass, when you are anchored to it through daily practice, you stop being blown around by every wind that comes. You develop what I call spiritual stability, the ability to be moved without being swept away, the ability to face difficulty without being destroyed by it, the ability to hold your vision steady even when the circumstances around you are anything but steady. I want to talk about something that is rarely discussed in conversations about spirituality. Forgiveness, not as a religious obligation, not as something you do for the other person, but as an act of radical self-liberation. Because holding on to hurt, carrying the weight of what someone did to you, replaying it, reliving it, letting it define your story, that is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry. And I speak from personal experience. There have been people in my life who did not show up the way I needed them to, who made choices that hurt me deeply, who did not support my vision, my dreams, the direction I knew I had to go. And I had a choice. I could carry that hurt and let it color everything: my work, my relationships, my sense of what was possible for me. Or I could choose, consciously and deliberately, to put it down. Not because what happened was okay, not because the pain was not real, but because the pain was mine. and I was the only one who could decide whether to keep carrying it or to set it free. Forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is the most powerful spiritual act available to a human being, because it says, this will not define me. This will not limit me. This will not have the final word about who I am and what I am capable of. I am bigger than what happened to me, and I choose freedom. This is spiritual maturity, and it changes everything. Now let me talk about purpose. Because the spiritual life is not only about the inner journey, it is about the outward expression of that inner journey in the world. Your purpose, the reason you are here, not the reason your parents hoped you were here, not the reason society assigned you, but your reason, the unique, irreplaceable, deeply personal contribution that only you can make to the world. Every human being has one. I believe this with every part of me. Every single person listening to this has something, a gift, a perspective, an experience, a capacity for love or healing or creation or leadership that the world genuinely needs. And discovering that purpose, living it, expressing it, sharing it, is the highest expression of the spiritual life. It is why you are here. Not to accumulate, not to impress, not to survive, to contribute, to love, to create, to live the world, however slightly, however locally, however quietly, better than you found it. This is your spiritual calling, and it is worth everything you have to give. One more thing before we leave this chapter. The spiritual life requires community. You cannot grow alone. No spiritual tradition in history has suggested that you can. The mystics had their communities. The monks had their orders. The prophets had their disciples. You need people who are walking the same path, who share your values, who will hold you accountable, not just to your goals, but to your becoming. Find those people or build that community, and then show up for it with everything you have. Because the spiritual life is not a solitary achievement. It is a shared journey, and it is infinitely more beautiful when you walk it together. Chapter 2. Your work is your love made visible. The occupational dimension. There is a quote that has stayed with me for years, and I return to it often. Your work is your love made visible. Sit with that for a moment. Really sit with it. Your work, not your job title, not your income bracket, not your LinkedIn profile, but your work. The thing you actually do with your time and your energy and your intelligence and your heart, the contribution you make to the world, is your love made visible. When that is true, when the work comes from love, everything changes. The way you approach the morning changes. The way you handle setbacks changes. The way you relate to the people you serve changes. Even the way you rest changes, because you know that the rest is in service of something that genuinely matters to you. But when it is not true, when the work is disconnected from love, from meaning, from anything that genuinely stirs your soul, then even success feels hollow. Even achievement feels empty. Even the moments that should feel like victories feel like arrivals at a destination you are not sure you wanted to reach. I know both of these states intimately. I became an entrepreneur in 2012, not because I had a perfectly researched business plan, not because I had investors lined up or a market analysis completed. I became an entrepreneur because I could not keep ignoring a calling that was getting louder every single year. A calling to help people, to teach, to share what I had discovered about living a full and meaningful life, to build something that was genuinely mine, that grew with me, served a real community, and provided for my family in a way that felt aligned with my values. That calling has not always been a straight road. There have been long stretches of doubt, months, sometimes years of building without visible results, of investing in something that seemed to be growing so slowly that I sometimes wondered if it was growing at all. But here is what sustained me through all of it. The love, the genuine, bone-deep love for the work itself, for the people I was trying to reach, for the message I was trying to carry into the world. When you love your work, really love it, it is not motivation you need. Motivation comes and goes. It is unreliable. It depends on mood and circumstance and whether you slept well last night. What you need is something deeper than motivation. You need meaning. And meaning sustains you through everything that motivation cannot. So let me ask you the question that matters most in the occupational dimension. Not what do you do, but why do you do it? What is the love that lives underneath your occupation? What is the change you are trying to make in the world, however small, however local, however specific? Who are the people you are most called to serve? And what do you know about their lives, their struggles, their hopes, that makes you the right person to show up for them? If you can answer those questions clearly and honestly, you have found your occupational North Star. And no amount of difficulty or setback or slow progress will be able to permanently knock you off course, because you know why you are there. Now I want to talk about something that conversations about work and vocation and career almost never address: the fear of being seen. For many people, especially people who feel called to creative or entrepreneurial or purpose-driven work, the deepest obstacle is not a lack of skill or knowledge or even resources. It is the terror of being truly seen, of putting something that matters deeply to them, something that comes from the most honest and vulnerable part of who they are, into the world, where it can be judged, ignored, misunderstood, criticized. I know this fear. I have felt it before every book I have written, every video I have recorded, every platform I have launched. That moment just before you press publish, where every voice of self-doubt rises up and says, "Who do you think you are? Who gave you permission? What if nobody cares? What if they care and they hate it? What if you get it wrong?" And here is what I have learned to say back to those voices. The world does not need my perfection. The world needs my presence. It does not need me to have everything figured out before I show up. It needs me to show up, honestly, wholeheartedly, imperfectly, and to keep showing up. Because every person who has ever changed anything, every teacher, every healer, every artist, every entrepreneur, every leader who has made a real difference in even one life, started before they were ready, started scared, started imperfect, and kept going anyway. Your work is an act of courage, every single day. And that courage, that willingness to show up and be seen, is itself an act of love for the people who need what you have, for the world that is better because you decided to contribute, and for yourself, for the version of you that came here to build something real. Let me talk about money now, because any honest conversation about work must include it. Money is not the enemy of meaningful work. Let me say that clearly. There is a story that circulates in certain spiritual and creative communities that goes something like this: if you truly love what you do, money will follow. Just focus on the passion and the provision will come. And there is truth in that. There is real truth. Passion and purpose do attract opportunities. They do open doors. They do build the kind of trust with an audience that eventually converts into sustainable income. But passion alone will not pay school fees. It will not put food on the table. It will not keep the lights on. And pretending otherwise, romanticizing financial struggle, as evidence of spiritual purity is not wisdom. It is a story we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of learning the financial and business skills that our work actually requires. The fulfilled occupational life integrates both work that means something and work that sustains you, a calling that serves others and an income that frees you, purpose and profit, not as opposites, as partners. And achieving that integration requires two things that most purpose-driven people resist. First, learning the craft of business, marketing, sales, financial management. These are not dirty words. They are the skills that allow your meaningful work to reach more people and sustain itself over time. You owe it to your calling to learn them. Second, charging what your work is worth. This is a struggle for so many people who do deeply meaningful work. Healers, teachers, coaches, creators, people who give so much of themselves that they feel almost guilty charging for it. But here is the truth. Undercharging is not humility. It is self-abandonment, and it ultimately limits the number of people you can serve, because an underpaid mission eventually runs out of fuel. You are allowed to be well compensated for work that serves people. You are allowed to build financial security and freedom while doing something that matters. You are allowed to have both. In fact, you deserve both. And one more thing about the occupational dimension before we move on. Rest. Real, intentional, protected rest. The most productive people I have ever studied or known are not the ones who work the most hours. They are the ones who understand that rest is not the opposite of work. Rest is part of the work. Creativity replenishes in rest. Insight comes in rest. The subconscious mind, which does some of its best problem solving when the conscious mind is quiet, works in rest. Protect your rest. Schedule it. Take it seriously. And know that every time you truly rest, fully, without guilt, you are investing in the quality and the sustainability of your work. Your work is your love, made visible. Make sure the love stays alive. Chapter 3, the temple you live in, the physical dimension. I want to talk to you about your body, but not in the way you are probably expecting. Not with a list of foods to eat or avoid. Not with a workout program or a weight loss goal or a before and after vision of what you could look like if you just tried harder. I want to talk about your body the way it deserves to be talked about. With reverence, with tenderness, with the kind of honest, loving attention that you would give to something you truly treasured. Because your body is treasured. It is the only one you will ever have. And the relationship you have with it, the way you think about it, speak to it, treat it, listen to it, that relationship is one of the most consequential of your entire life. Most of us were never taught to have a good relationship with our bodies. We were taught to manage them, to discipline them, to punish them when they did not perform as expected, to be ashamed of them when they did not conform to whatever the current cultural standard of acceptable happened to be. We were taught to push through pain, to ignore signals, to prioritize other people's needs above our own physical needs until our body had to make itself impossible to ignore. Through illness, through injury, through the kind of complete collapse that forces even the most determined overachiever to finally slow down. What if we tried something radically different? What if we tried listening? Your body is speaking to you right now, in this moment. It is telling you things about your energy levels, your stress, your needs, your boundaries, your emotional state, through a language of sensation that most of us have been trained to tune out. The tightness in your chest when you say yes to something you should say no to. The way your stomach drops when you are about to do something that violates your values. The headache that always arrives at the same time of day when you have been sitting still for too long the bone-deep fatigue that goes beyond sleep deprivation, the fatigue of carrying things you were never meant to carry alone. Your body knows, and it will keep telling you, patiently, persistently, increasingly loudly, until you stop and listen. So let us practice that right now. Without moving, just in awareness, scan your body from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. Where is there tension? Where is there tightness? Where is there pain? Even minor, even the kind you usually ignore. And now, without trying to fix any of it, just acknowledge it. I hear you. I see you. I know you are there. That acknowledgement, that simple, quiet act of turning toward your body's experience instead of away from it, is the beginning of a completely different relationship with the physical dimension of your life. Now, let me talk about movement. Because movement is not optional in a fulfilled life. It is essential. But I want to reframe what movement means. Because for too many people, movement has become associated with punishment. With paying off the food you ate, with the obligation you have to fulfill before you are allowed to feel good about yourself today. That is not movement. That is self-punishment with athletic clothing. Real movement, the kind that nourishes the physical dimension, is joyful, or at the very least, satisfying. It is something you do because it makes you feel more alive, not less. Because it clears your head and lifts your mood and builds in you a quiet confidence that comes only from showing up for yourself consistently. For some people that is running. For others it is dancing in the kitchen while the children do homework. It is walking barefoot on the ground, feeling the earth beneath your feet, breathing the air that the trees have cleaned for you. It is swimming, or yoga, or gardening, or any other form of moving your body through space with intention and presence. Find your movement, the form that actually calls to you, not the one you think you should do, not the one that burns the most calories, not the one that is most impressive to post about, the one that makes you feel good in your body. And do it consistently, not perfectly, consistently. Because in the physical dimension, as in all the dimensions, it is the daily practice, not the occasional grand gesture, that creates lasting change. I want to talk about food, not as nutrition science. There are plenty of resources for that. But as relationship, your relationship with food is telling you something about your relationship with yourself. When you eat in a hurry, standing over the sink, barely tasting what you are consuming, what does that say about how much you value your own nourishment? When you reach for food, not because you are hungry, but because you are bored or stressed or lonely or avoiding something, what is your body actually trying to tell you? What hunger is actually asking to be fed? And when you sit down properly, intentionally, to a meal you have prepared with care, with food that is genuinely good for you, eaten slowly and savored, what does that say about your relationship with yourself? Food is care. Food is love. Food is one of the most basic and profound ways we either honor or neglect the body we live in. Treat yourself to the real thing. And sleep. Let us talk about sleep. Because this is the dimension of the physical life that modern culture most persistently and most dangerously undermines. Sleep is not laziness. Sleep is not weakness. Sleep is not something to be proud of minimizing. Sleep is the time when your brain consolidates memories, when your body repairs itself at the cellular level, when your immune system does its most important work, when your emotional regulation, your ability to respond rather than react, to choose rather than impulse, is restored. Chronically sleep-deprived people are more reactive, less creative, less empathetic, less able to learn and retain information. They make worse decisions. They feel more anxious and more depressed. Their physical health deteriorates, their relationships suffer, and yet we celebrate the person who only needs 4 hours. We glorify the all-nighter as a badge of hustle and dedication. This is a story we need to stop telling because it is killing us. Your sleep is sacred. Protect it the way you protect your most important meetings. Because nothing you accomplish by stealing hours from your sleep is worth the cost of what you lose. Your body is a temple, not a project to be optimized, not a problem to be solved, not a machine to be pushed past its limits in the service of a productivity goal. A temple. Tend to it with love. Chapter 4. The mind that creates worlds. The intellectual dimension. You are a thinker. I want you to hear that. Really hear it. You are a thinker. Regardless of what grades you got in school, regardless of whether anyone in your life ever acknowledged your intelligence, regardless of how much formal education you have or do not have, regardless of how often you doubt yourself or second-guess your ideas or feel like everyone else in the room understands something that you are just barely grasping. You are a thinker, a curious, capable, creative thinker. And the quality of your inner life, the richness of what you allow into your mind, the depth of how you process it, the honesty with which you examine your own assumptions and beliefs. That quality is shaping every single aspect of your outer life. Because everything visible started as something invisible. Every building started as a thought. Every business started as an idea. Every relationship started as a choice. And every choice started as a thought. Every life, every single human life, in its full complexity and beauty, is ultimately the lived expression of the thoughts that were allowed to take root and grow within it. This is why the intellectual dimension is not a luxury. It is not the domain of academics and philosophers and people with advanced degrees. It is the birthright and the responsibility of every thinking human being, which is every human being. The intellectual life begins with curiosity. And curiosity, I have noticed, is one of the first things that gets educated out of us. As children, we are relentlessly, magnificently, exasperatingly curious. Why is the sky blue? Why do people die? Why do some families have more than others? Why does this person look different from that person? Why? And somewhere along the way, through years of schooling that rewarded right answers over good questions, through a culture that values knowing over wondering, through the sheer exhaustion of adult life that leaves little time for the luxury of pure curiosity, we stop asking. We learn what we need to know to function, to do our jobs, to pass the tests, to navigate the systems. And then we stop. But the curious mind never stops. And the people who never stop asking, who maintain the childlike wonder of genuine inquiry alongside the mature capacity for rigorous thinking, those are the people who keep growing, who keep surprising themselves and others, who keep finding new depths in old things and unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Stay curious. It is one of the most important decisions you can make about who you want to be. Now let me talk about what we put into our minds. Because in this era, in this extraordinary, overwhelming, unprecedented era of infinite information, curation has become a survival skill. We are exposed to more information in a single day than someone living a century ago would have encountered in an entire year. And most of that information is not curated for our growth, our wisdom, or our well-being. Most of it is curated for our attention, which is a very different thing. Attention is what social media companies sell. It is their product, and the most effective way to capture and hold human attention, as decades of research has confirmed, is not through beauty or wisdom or truth. It is through outrage, through fear, through comparison, through the dopamine loop of endless novelty that keeps us scrolling for just one more piece of something that leaves us feeling simultaneously stimulated and empty. The intellectual life requires you to take control of what enters your mind. Not in a closed-minded, shut out the world way, but in the way of a deliberate curator, someone who chooses what they read, what they watch, what they listen to, what conversations they invest in, based not on what is most stimulating in the moment, but on what is most nourishing over time. Read books, real books, the kind that take more than 5 minutes to consume, the kind that require you to sit with ideas long enough to actually engage with them, rather than just scan past them. Fiction that expands your empathy by putting you inside lives and experiences radically different from your own. Non-fiction that challenges what you think you know about the world. History that gives you the long perspective your day-to-day life cannot provide. Have conversations that go somewhere, not just small talk. Though there is a place for that, and we will talk about it in the social chapter. But conversations where you are genuinely changed by the exchange, where you leave knowing something you did not know before, or seeing something you had not seen before, or questioning something you had previously taken for granted. These conversations are some of the greatest gifts available to us as human beings, and they are becoming increasingly rare in a world of curated echo chambers and algorithmic bubbles that show us only what we already agree with. Seek out people who think differently from you, not to argue, not to win, but to learn. Because the mind that can only validate its existing beliefs is not a growing mind, it is a defended one, and a defended mind cannot create anything new. There is one more aspect of the intellectual dimension I want to address, and it is the one that most directly connects to everything else we are talking about today. Self-knowledge, the examined life, the practice of turning your intellectual capacity, your curiosity, your analytical ability, your capacity for honest inquiry, inward, toward yourself. Knowing why you do what you do. Understanding the patterns you repeat and the stories you tell yourself and the beliefs you hold about what is possible for you. Examining your assumptions, especially the ones you have held so long and so unconsciously that they feel not like beliefs, but like facts. This is the deepest intellectual work available to a human being. And it is the work that transforms every other dimension of your life. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. And you cannot see clearly until you are willing to look honestly. So look, with courage and with kindness toward yourself. You will not like everything you find. That is okay. The seeing is the beginning of the choosing. And every moment is an opportunity to choose differently. Your mind is extraordinary. Use it fully. Use it wisely. Use it in service of a life that is genuinely, deeply worth thinking about. Chapter 5. You are not made to do this alone. The social dimension. Let me be honest with you about something. One of the loneliest feelings in the world is being surrounded by people and still feeling completely alone. Not physically alone, surrounded by colleagues, by followers, by family, by the constant noise and activity of other human beings. And still, in the middle of all of it, feeling this deep, quiet, persistent ache of disconnection. Like nobody really sees you, like all the interactions are surface, pleasant enough, busy enough, ordinary enough, but never quite reaching the place in you that most needs to be touched, most needs to be known, Have you felt that? I have. And when I speak to people across every culture, every background, every level of external success, the answer is almost always yes. Yes, I have felt that. Because we live in a world that has made a profound mistake. We have confused connection with contact. We have more ways to reach each other than at any other point in human history. More platforms, more channels, more ways to broadcast our existence to more people simultaneously. And yet, by almost every measure, loneliness has become one of the defining crises of our time. Because contact without depth is not connection. Likes without love are not belonging. Followers without friendship are not community. And the human being, this fundamentally social, deeply relational, profoundly communal creature, cannot thrive without real connection. The research on this is overwhelming and consistent. Social isolation is as damaging to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness increases the risk of early death by 26%. And conversely, people with strong social connections live longer, recover from illness faster, experience less depression and anxiety, and report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. We are wired for each other, not as an optional upgrade to the basic human package, as a fundamental requirement for flourishing. So what is the difference between contact and connection? What separates a surface interaction from a real one? One word: vulnerability. Real connection requires you to be seen, not your highlight reel, not your polished, competent, always handling everything version of yourself, but you, the real you, with your uncertainties and your wounds and your questions and your unexpected depths and your very human needs. That version of you, the unedited one. And I know that sounds terrifying to many people, especially people who have been hurt, who have shown their real selves before and had that trust betrayed, who have learned through painful experience that the safest thing to do is to keep people at a comfortable distance, to be friendly without being known, to connect without actually connecting. I understand that protection. I have lived inside it myself, but I also know its cost, the cost of never being fully known, of performing instead of being, of maintaining the surface while the depths of you go untouched, unacknowledged, unseen. That cost is too high. And here is the gift that vulnerability offers, the one most people never discover because they are too afraid to find out. When you show up fully, when you risk being seen, you give other people permission to do the same. And that permission is the beginning of real community. Think about the person in your life who you feel most comfortable with, the one you can truly be yourself with, the one who knows the real you and loves you anyway. Maybe because of it rather than despite it. How did that relationship get to that place? It got there through moments of honesty, through one of you being willing to go a little deeper than was strictly comfortable, through the risk of real disclosure, and the gift of finding that the other person not only stayed, but moved toward you. That is the alchemy of real connection, and it is available to every human being willing to take the risk. Now, I want to talk about something that the social dimension requires, that most conversations about relationships avoid. Boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are not the act of shutting people out or protecting yourself from intimacy. They are the exact opposite. Boundaries are the conditions under which real intimacy is possible. They are the honest declaration of what you need in order to show up fully. In your relationships, in your work, in your life. They are the "this is what works for me and this is what does not," that allows you to be genuinely present instead of resentfully compliant. Many of us were raised without healthy models of boundaries. We saw either walls, People so defended that real closeness was impossible, or no limits at all. People so merged with others' needs that they had no clear sense of their own. Learning to set boundaries, to say what you mean, to honor your needs, to protect your energy while remaining genuinely open to connection, that is one of the most important social skills you will ever develop. And it is not selfish. It is the prerequisite for showing up fully for the people who matter to you. I also want to talk about community, the larger social ecosystem we inhabit, because the social dimension is not only about one-to-one relationships, it is about belonging, the felt sense that you are part of something larger than yourself, that there is a group, a tribe, a movement, a community that shares your values and your vision and your commitment to something that matters, where you are not just tolerated but genuinely welcomed, not just accepted but truly celebrated. That belonging, that sense of being part of a we, is one of the most profound human experiences available. And it requires you to contribute, not just to consume from a community, but to actively build it, to show up, to give your time, your energy, your honest engagement, to celebrate others genuinely, to serve the collective not just when it benefits you, but because the health of the whole matters to you. This is what community actually is. Not a group of people in the same place, but a group of people who have chosen actively, repeatedly, even when it is inconvenient, to show up for each other. Build that, or find it, and then guard it with everything you have. Because the right community does not just make life better, it makes life possible. Chapter 6. The world is your home. The environmental dimension. Step outside for a moment. Even in your imagination, step outside. Feel the ground beneath your feet, whatever ground it is, concrete or grass or earth or sand. It is holding you. It has been holding you all your life, without asking for anything in return. Look up at the sky. Whatever sky is above you right now, blazing afternoon blue or soft with evening or scattered with stars or gray with the weight of coming rain. It is there, constant, vast, indifferent to your schedule and your deadlines and your to-do list in the most magnificently liberating way. Take a breath, not the air from inside your building. If you can, real outside air. The air that has moved over mountains and oceans and forests and cities before it arrived at your lungs in this exact moment. You are part of this, not separate from it, not visiting it as a guest, not passing through it on your way to something more important. You are part of this, made of the same elements, breathing the same air that every human being who has ever lived has breathed, walking on the same earth, looking up at the same sky. The environmental dimension is about that relationship, your relationship with the living world you inhabit, and it operates on two scales, the intimate and the vast, the personal spaces of your daily life and the larger natural world that contains them all. Let us start with nature. There is something that happens in the human body when it encounters the natural world. Something measurable. Cortisol drops. Blood pressure decreases. The nervous system shifts from the high alert, resource-mobilizing state of stress into the calm, expansive, restorative state of safety. Simply by being outside, simply by being near trees or water or sky. Without doing anything, without accomplishing anything, without checking anything off a list, just by being in the presence of the living world. This is not mysticism, it is physiology. Our nervous systems evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in intimate relationship with the natural world. We are built for it. We are calibrated to it in ways that go deeper than culture or language or individual history. Nature is where we come from. And at some level, some ancient pre-verbal cellular level, Our bodies know it. I walk almost every day if I can, not to get somewhere, not to burn calories, but to be in relationship with the world outside my four walls, to feel my body moving through space the way it was designed to move, to smell what the air smells like today, to notice what is blooming and what has finished blooming and what is just beginning. I smell flowers. I know that sounds simple, but there is something about the deliberate, sensory, fully present act of stopping to smell a flower that is deeply, quietly nourishing. It is an act of attention, of presence, of choosing for just one moment to be fully here rather than rushing past toward whatever is next. These small acts of engagement with the natural world, they are not luxuries. They are maintenance. Regular maintenance of a nervous system that is otherwise perpetually overstimulated by the artificial pace and light and noise of modern life. Make time for them, even in a city, even in a busy life, even when it feels like there is no time. Especially then. Now let me talk about your immediate environment, the spaces where you actually live and work and rest. Because your physical environment is not neutral. It is not just a backdrop to your life. It is an active participant in it. The spaces you inhabit shape your mood. They influence your focus. They communicate something to your nervous system and therefore to your sense of yourself every single time you enter them. Think about how you feel when you walk into a beautifully ordered, clean, light-filled room. And then think about how you feel when you walk into a cluttered, dark, chaotic space. The difference is not subtle. It is immediate and it is physical. Your body responds before your mind even registers the details. This is why I believe so strongly that creating beautiful, intentional spaces in your home and your work is not a vanity project. It is an act of self-respect and an investment in your own well-being and productivity. You do not need expensive things. You need intentional things. Things that are there because they belong, because they serve a purpose, because they bring you joy. A clear desk, a plant that is alive and tended, natural light where you can have it. A bedroom that is genuinely dark and quiet and cool, devoted to rest, not to scrolling. A corner somewhere in your home, however small, that is yours. That holds something beautiful. A candle, a book, a photograph that means something to you. These are not small things. They are the daily architecture of a life that says to its inhabitant, you matter. You deserve beauty. Your comfort and your peace are worth caring about. And at the largest scale, the scale of the planet itself, we are living in a moment of genuine reckoning with the relationship between human activity and the health of the earth. And I do not want to approach this through guilt or fear, or the overwhelm that comes from feeling like the problems are too enormous for any individual action to matter. Instead, I want to offer this simple frame. The earth is your home, your actual, literal, only home, the home of your children and their children, the home of every other living being you share this planet with. And how you treat your home says something about who you are. Not everything. You are not defined by your recycling habits or your carbon footprint, but something. The small, consistent choices that reflect a person who loves their home and wants to take care of it, who takes only what they need, who notices beauty and protects it where they can, who lives with a little more reverence and a little less carelessness toward the extraordinary, fragile, magnificent world that sustains them. This is the environmental dimension. It is close and it is vast. It is inside your home and it is as wide as the earth. Tend to it accordingly. Chapter 7, Coming Home to Yourself. The emotional dimension. We have arrived at the final chapter, and I want you to notice something as we arrive here. You have been on a journey for over 2 hours, through the ground of your spirit, through the love in your work, through the temple of your body, through the magnificent landscape of your mind, through the warmth and the complexity of your relationships, through the world that holds you. And now we come to the dimension that underlies all of it. The dimension that is present in every chapter we have already walked through. In the grief that sits in the spiritual journey, in the fear that shows up in the occupational one, in the sensations that speak in the physical, in the wonder of the intellectual, in the vulnerability required for the social, in the awe awakened by the environmental. The emotional dimension is not separate from the others. It is the medium through which all of them are experienced. Emotion is how you know you are alive. And I want to begin this chapter with something that I believe with everything I have. Your feelings are not your weakness. They are not the soft, inconvenient, impractical side of you that gets in the way of the serious business of living. Your feelings are your intelligence. Every emotion you experience is information, a signal, precise, specific, honest, about your needs, your values, your experiences, your well-being. Fear tells you where you need courage, or where a genuine threat exists that deserves your attention. Anger tells you where a boundary has been violated, where something you value deeply has been disrespected or taken from you. Anger, when you learn to listen to it honestly rather than suppress or explode it, is one of the clearest signals available to you about what matters to you most. Grief tells you how deeply you have loved. You cannot grieve something you do not care about. The depth of your grief is the measure of the depth of your love. And that capacity to love so much that losing something breaks you open, is not a flaw. It is one of the most beautiful things about being human. Joy tells you where your soul is alive, where your real yes is, where your life is most aligned with who you truly are. Shame tells you where you have violated your own values and calls you not to self-punishment, but to repair. Anxiety tells you there is uncertainty ahead, and that part of you is not sure it has the resources to meet what is coming. It is a call to preparation and to support, not to avoidance. Every emotion, every single one, without exception, has something true and useful to say. The question is whether you are willing to listen, and most of us, most of the time, are not. Not because we are weak or cowardly or emotionally immature, but because we were trained not to. Because somewhere along the way, through family dynamics, through cultural messages, through the simple experience of pain that felt too big to be with, we learned that the safest strategy was to not feel too much, to stay busy, to stay strong, to push through, to keep it together. And we got very good at it. So good in some cases that we genuinely do not know what we are feeling anymore. We are disconnected from our own emotional lives, living on the surface of our experience rather than in the depths of it. And the cost of that disconnection is enormous, because suppressed emotions do not disappear. They migrate, they show up in our bodies as tension, as illness, as the persistent exhaustion of holding ourselves together. They show up in our relationships as walls we cannot explain, as the same conflict recurring in different forms with different people. They show up in our work as the creativity that has dried up, the passion that has faded, the purpose that feels increasingly distant. The emotions that have not been allowed to move keep demanding to be felt. They are patient, relentless, and eventually, always eventually, they will be heard. Better to meet them consciously, on your terms, with support, than to have them arrive without warning in the least convenient possible moment. So how do you begin to do that? How do you develop what I call emotional courage? The willingness to feel fully, honestly, without shutting down or spiraling out of control. It starts with a simple practice. Naming. When you notice a feeling, any feeling, pause for just a moment and name it. Not as a story, not as I am feeling this because he said that, and it reminded me of when this happened, and it means that I am not. Just the feeling, sad, scared, angry, excited, ashamed, grateful, lonely. Just the word. Because the research is clear that naming an emotion, even silently, even just to yourself, activates the prefrontal cortex and decreases the intensity of the emotional response in the amygdala. The act of naming literally calms the nervous system. You are not drowning in your feelings, you are labeling them, and that label creates just enough distance to choose how you respond rather than simply react. Then, if you can, allow the feeling to be there, without fixing it, without explaining it, without making it mean something about whether you are okay or not okay. Just allow. Feelings, when they are not suppressed and not amplified but simply allowed, move. They are designed to move. Like weather, they arise, they intensify, they peak, they pass. The ones that get stuck are the ones we resist, the ones we spend enormous energy holding at bay. Let them move. Let yourself feel. And trust completely that you are bigger than any feeling that arises. You have survived everything that has come before. Every fear, every heartbreak, every moment of profound doubt and devastating loss, every time you thought you could not do this, whatever this was, and then somehow you did. You are still here. That is not nothing. That is everything. Now let me talk about joy. Because the emotional life is not only about the hard feelings. It is equally about the full experience of joy. And joy is something many of us have a complicated relationship with. We allow ourselves conditional joy, joy that we have earned, joy that is appropriate to the circumstances, joy that does not make us look naive or ungrateful or unaware of the suffering in the world, but uncomplicated, full-hearted, freely experienced joy, the kind a child has when they are doing something they love, that is rarer than it should be in most adult lives. And I want to advocate strongly and lovingly for more of it. Joy is not irresponsible. Joy is not denial. Joy is not a luxury for people whose lives are easier than yours. Joy is a fundamental human need, and allowing yourself to feel it fully without immediately dimming it with guilt or anxiety or the habit of bracing for something to go wrong is an act of spiritual and emotional health. Where is your joy? What makes you feel genuinely uncomplicated, simply glad to be alive? Find it, protect it, schedule it if you have to. Treat it as seriously as you treat your most important responsibilities. Because a life without joy is a life on empty. And you cannot serve anyone well, not your family, not your community, not your calling, from a state of chronic joylessness. Fill yourself up so you can pour out freely, sustainably, from genuine abundance. And finally, because this is where all emotional work ultimately leads, I want to talk about love. Not romantic love specifically, though that is part of it, but love as an orientation, love as the fundamental stance you take toward your life, your relationships, your work, your world. The spiritual traditions of the world agree on very little, but on this, on the centrality and the power of love, they agree completely. Love is the ground of everything. It is what we are made of and what we are made for. It is the force that heals, that connects, that creates, that sustains. And choosing love in the small moments and the large ones, in the easy relationships and the difficult ones, in the work that inspires you and the work that simply needs to be done. Choosing love as your orientation is the most powerful choice available to a human being. Not soft, not passive, not naive, fierce, clear, committed. The love that says, I see you fully and I choose you fully. The love that says, I believe in what we are building even when the evidence is slow in coming. The love that says, I am here for the long journey, not just the exciting beginning. That is the love the emotional life is built on. That is the love that makes everything else in this Bible possible. The fulfilled life. We have walked a long road together today, through 7 dimensions, through the ground of the Spirit and the love in the work and the wisdom of the body and the wonder of the mind and the warmth of the tribe and the beauty of the world and the truth of the heart. And I want to take a moment before we close to just be here together. In this space between the journey we just took and whatever comes next, I want to ask you one final question, not a small one. What would your life look like, feel like, if all 7 of these dimensions were alive? Not perfect, not optimized, not a magazine cover version of wellness and success, but alive, your spirit connected and grounded, your work purposeful and sustaining, your body cared for and listened to, your mind curious and growing, your relationships honest and deep, your environment beautiful and nurturing, your emotional world honest and free. What would that feel like? I will tell you what it feels like. It feels like home, not a place, a state of being, a way of moving through the world where you are not performing or proving or competing or surviving. You are living fully, richly, imperfectly, magnificently, in all 7 dimensions, simultaneously, with all your contradictions and all your gifts and all you're still becoming and all you're already here. And this life, this 7-dimensional, fully inhabited, deeply felt, consciously created life is not something you achieve once and keep. It is something you choose every day, in the 5 quiet minutes of the morning before the noise begins, in the food you choose to put in your body today, in the conversation you choose to have honestly instead of avoiding for one more day, in the walk you take when you could have scrolled, in the feeling you choose to allow instead of push away, in the boundary you set, the gratitude you express, the brave idea you write down instead of dismissing, in every small, conscious, courageous choice that adds up over weeks and months and years to a life that looks exactly like who you truly are. And you are already on this journey. The fact that you are here, that you listened all the way to the end through all 7 dimensions, tells me something essential about you. You are the kind of person who takes their life seriously, who believes that growth is real and possible, who is willing to sit with the uncomfortable, to feel the difficult, to walk into the unknown territory of their own becoming without a guarantee of how it turns out. You are brave, even if you do not always feel like it. You are capable, even when the doubt is loud. You are becoming something, someone extraordinary, even in the moments when progress is invisible, and the distance between where you are and where you are going feels enormous. Keep going. One practice, one decision, one honest conversation, one step, and then another. And then another. This is how the fulfilled life is built. Not in the grand gestures, not in the overnight transformations, not in the perfect moment when everything lines up and the fear disappears and you finally feel ready, but in the daily, steady, faithful, showing up for your own one precious, irreplaceable, magnificent life. I believe in you. I believe in this life you are building. And I am honored, deeply, genuinely honored, to be walking any part of this journey alongside you. This is your 7D Bible. Now go live it. With love, always, always with love, Gladys. Thank you for spending this moment with me today. If this conversation moved you, share it. Not because I need the numbers, but because somewhere in your world there is a person who needs to hear exactly what you just heard. Be the reason they find it. And come find me at Smart Investor Leader, where we continue this journey together. Every dimension, every day, every version of you that is still becoming. See you there at www.smartinvestorleader.com.